This meeting to order. May I have a roll call vote?
Yachty? Here. Yeager?
Here.
Stabler?
Here.
Heisler?
Here.
Back.
Here. Item number 2, an approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving on. Item 3, a preliminary subdivision plat.
Okay, so this is a preliminary plat, proposes 49 lots on 11.28 acres, and this would revise the original preliminary plat. That depicted 40 lots. I think this was originally planned to be 60-foot lots, so a couple of images you see up there. The one on the left is what was currently approved, and the one on the right is what's proposed. The larger lot you see on the interior would be planned for a private park. It's my understanding this would be a age-restricted community, and that 41 would be a private park with a clubhouse on it. So there's really not much of a change. The road, I mean, interior road, circular road, so that doesn't change. It's just the number of lots, which really isn't that big of a deal. Zoning is RS9. It's urban medium intensity on the future land use map. And then we did have 2 findings for compliance with the comprehensive plan as well as the subdivision ordinance, and and staff does recommend to the city council you accept that listed finding and forward the request to the city council with recommendation for approval.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any presentation by the applicant?
No presentation, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any any questions from the public? If not, we'll go to questions and conversation from the panel. Commission? Anything? Seemed pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Get a few more lots, homes in there, shrink down the lots, bring down the price a little bit for each home. I think it's good.
Yeah, that was the idea. I'll just maybe add one thing. We are looking at going to a 55 and older community, building a clubhouse with an indoor pickleball court. Zero entry, going to do some slab on grades and just try to provide a little bit of a price point for the elderly that, I shouldn't say the elderly, the people that are looking.
Come on now, yeah, 55.
Bad choice of words.
That's closer and closer, but
Screwed up, I'm sorry. Yeah.
no, that's wonderful. The handicap accessible or the low entry, no entry.
Absolutely. So yeah, it'll all be zero entry, no steps, and then we'll do some with basements, some without, and just try to create a community where people can live and work and play. Clubhouse will have a little bar area, community room, fireplace, place to play cards, etc. So, and then we'll also put documents together. We'll take care of all of their outside maintenance, so their land, snow removal, mowing their yards, and then we're looking at putting an a la carte package together where even if they wanted us to handle their flowers, we can do stuff like that. So, yeah, very similar to the model that took place on Jones that the Ewing development did, but that was a co-op. This is straight sales.
Nice. No, I think it's a nice addition to the city. I think we could use even more of these. I think.
Agreed.
Maybe try to keep some of those 55 and older here and not going to some of these other communities outside the state that offer those sorts of things. Because more and more we hear, Iowa City area is a phenomenal place to retire, and I think this is a good option to just keep more people here.
And we're gonna keep the connectivity, so the walking trails will go down to. We're building a new strip center that will have a Starbucks in it, and other Jersey Mike's, and obviously Pizza Ranch and the bowling center. So walkability and connectivity around the ponds and to the main trails in town.
Were you looking at restricting street access? I know that the one on Jones had.
Yeah, just you won't be able to have direct access to Jones, which you want. So they'll have access to this public street though, all the lots.
Okay, so but no like gates or
No, we're not going to do it. Private
security. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that will be a public street, so we wouldn't allow that.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
And that just as a trend, I think what we're seeing, we're such a young community, but you are seeing the parents, right?
Yeah,
moving
absolutely.
back to be closer to their grandkids, which is a great thing.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I love it.
You've heard me repeatedly from the Johnson County Livable Community Commission that we're looking for more builders to build the zero entry accessible for aging in place and at home. So that's wonderful, and we commend you for that. And I really appreciate seeing that.
Appreciate it.
And being my neighbors to the south, it'll look pretty.
There you
So
go.
I appreciate
All right.
that. Any other questions, comments? If not, could I have a roll call vote? No, I need a motion.
Well, I can move that the Planning Commission accept the two listed findings and forward the preliminary subdivision plat to City Council with a recommendation for approval.
I'll second.
And a second. There we go. And may I have a roll call vote, please?
Batky,
Aye.
Ahern,
Aye.
Staber,
Aye.
Yadi.
Aye.
You did.
Did
I said aye anyway.
You did-
If you,
no,
yeah.
I lost my vote.
Got it.
Then I'll say aye too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you call Heisler?
Oh,
Oh, maybe you
I
said,
didn't say
yeah.
Heisler.
Did I?
Aye.
There we go. There we go. Hey, we're all, I'm bumping through it too. It's all right.
Keeping us honest.
Always got to have an attorney or two in the room, right? Item number 4, the preliminary site plan.
Okay, so this is a preliminary site plan for, there's 14 4-unit and 1 2-unit townhouses. There's 58 units total on 5.45 acres. This is located in the Water Tower Place subdivision, so that continues to be built out. I think we're seeing townhouses are selling in that area of town based on affordability. See you, Brandon. Zoning is RM12, so permits townhouses. The future land use map designation is urban high intensity, so the zoning is consistent with the future land use. Here's a concept that we see, just a singular loop road that connects to the public streets, and they're loaded on each side. You see the design on the right. I think I sent out some information, but I don't think it's been signed yet, but there is some legislation that will restrict the cladding requirements that we could require. We presume that will get signed. We are kind of discussing some different alternatives. Again, we're not looking to drive up the price, but we are trying to make things look visually interesting. And I think I'd like to have some dialogue with some of the builders and the Home Builders Association before we do that. But just saying there's other things we can do besides just saying masonry. You can have building articulation and windows and things like that. So we'd like to explore that a little bit. So it's up there. I talked to the developer. He said he's going to stick with the masonry. So I think you'll see what's similarly constructed just to be consistent throughout the subdivision. We did have one finding that achieves consistency with the standards for preliminary site plans, and staff does recommend this commission accept the listed finding and forward the request to the City Council with a recommendation for approval.
Okay, thank you. And do we have an applicant presentation or comments?
No presentation. John Marner with MMS Consultants representing the developer. I'm available for any questions if you have any. I just one thing I'd add: the elevations for the facing the street there would be similar to. You can just see it there on the corner of Lot 5. They're similar buildings, similar architecture to what's already been approved and is getting ready to be constructed.
Great, thank you. Any feedback or presentation questions from the public? If not, I'll turn to the commissioners. Questions or comments?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, Ryan's got it ironed out by now. If there are none, I'd entertain a motion.
I move the Planning Commission accept a listed finding and forward the preliminary site plan to the City Council with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And may I have another roll call vote, please?
Ahern,
Aye.
Heisler,
Aye.
Batky,
Aye.
Yadi,
Aye.
Staber.
Aye. No L.
Staber.
It's all good.
All right. Item number 5, public hearing on a zoning map amendment. We're at Buck Moon Villas.
Okay, so we've been reviewing the subdivision construction plans. We're getting pretty close to approving those. And during the review, a couple of the lots just didn't meet the minimum lot size requirements for the RS6. And then it just kind of made sense. And one of the lots was uniquely configured. I'll probably just go to the subdivision there as you can see it. There was a triangular shaped lot that was a little odd. And then there was a much larger lot. But if you kind of look at the zoning map, I think the location for the RM12 is a no-brainer. It's literally right next to the RM12 on Dubuque Street, so it's on a busier street. And then the other portion is adjacent to the substation in Centro and literally adjacent to other RM12. So it just really made a lot of sense for this to be RM12. The original preliminary plat depicted 61 single unit and 7 multi-unit lots. So this change would allow 58 single unit lots and 9 multi. So it's really a minor change throughout. So no issues at all with it. We did have a virtual good neighbor meeting. Normally we do a 200-foot radius, but we reached out to the Fox Run just because I know they had been involved in this. So we wanted to reach out and expand the radius just to let them know this was a change. I think there was some miscommunication out that they were doing a big change, and it was like, no, we just clarified that this was a very minor change with these 2 lots. We had a good neighbor meeting. There was a couple people that attended, but I think one had technical problems, but I did speak with that person afterwards. They weren't objecting to the request, so we don't have any objections to the requests at all. We've got no formal letters or anything like that in the file, so it's pretty straightforward request. So we did have one finding, and staff is recommending that you accept that listed finding and forward the request to the City Council with the recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Do we have a presentation or any feedback from the applicant? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Benjamin Bahar from Townsend Engineering, representing the applicant. No, we don't have a formal presentation. The lot 61, or that triangle area, originally we had that reserved for a detention, and this area is just so flat and then with the train tracks and everything to the south, we had to move that detention over, and that's why it wasn't in the first rezoning. And then exactly what Ryan said on that first lot 1 over there, it was really close to getting code, and we got stormwater issues and whatnot, and it just made sense to put a duplex on there instead of leaving it a single family. It just didn't make any sense. But I'm available for any other questions.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? Now we'll go to the commissioners. I know the first thing I thought of was that Fox Run always had drainage questions. Please watch the drainage. So when you mention the retention and stuff like that, that it's addressed.
Yeah, and if you recall, I think we originally wanted the trail kind of along the north side of the development, but they just had to accept that drainage from Fox Run, so that's why it got moved into that interior public street. But I love the trails we have in town, so we do have a couple key pieces of trail connections in here. One will go through the subdivision and connect over to the one behind Cedar Springs. And then also continuing the construction of the 8-foot wide trail along Dubuque Street. And then we will, as a city, take on finishing that connection. So a couple key connection points for trails happening here as well.
Great. Any other comments or questions?
I'll just make a comment about the trails. So whenever possible, to not have them be part of the sidewalk with the crossings of driveways and everything else. Yep. I just have safety concerns whenever you do that, and you have these, because we have them in numerous places in the city, and it would always be nice if we could get the developers to just carve out a little space in the back of their developments to put a trail or something, because it's always just a little bit cleaner, nicer. People will tend to use them more frequently when they're not walking in front of someone's house and then having to avoid cars, because then, of course, you always have cars that will decide to park on the sidewalk and block it and all of those sorts of things. So I will just advocate again, when possible, and maybe just even more forcefully at times, to just try to avoid
That's
doing
actually a policy that we, and you'll see it, we'll talk about it in the next one, that we don't want that. We just didn't see an option here. The lots would have been had squeezed to get even further, and we had setback problems, but we would have had to live without that connection. But I totally agree.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Just wanted to
It's on your radar.
put it out there.
That's a good comment.
Consistently.
Yeah,
Good to
for
know.
sure.
Other comments, questions? Just after the last 24 hours, the drainage issues front of mind for lots of us after last night. All right, well, if there are none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that the planning commission accept the listed finding and forward the zoning map amendment to the city council with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
May I have another roll call vote, please?
Batke,
Aye.
Heisler,
Aye.
Staber,
Aye.
Yadi,
Aye.
Ahern.
Aye.
Great. Item number 6, public hearing on a zoning map amendment.
So this one's been pretty interesting, and you really see the southwest area of the city developing with the installation of that sewer lift station. This is outside of that lift station basin, but you see the progression of development in this area, and it really, Josiah and I had really kind of look at some things that you're not really necessarily paying attention in detail to these things until you get a development request and you're going back and forth. So representatives from McClure Engineering are here. They've been really great to work with. We appreciate that. So, we've kind of gone back and forth from what the original concept was. They've taken into account some of the concerns that we've had. And so the request you see in front of you today represents a series of conversations that we've had over the past several months. So we do have we have a future land use map amendment from urban low intensity to urban high intensity on the frontage, and it's 7.65 acres, and a companion request from ID to C2, which is highway commercial. RM12 on 17.1 acres, RM8 on 9.1 acres, and RS6 on 9.9 acres. Total acreage is 43.74 acres. Again, as we kind of looked at this development, let me first say that when we went through the comp plan adoption, we specifically looked at this property, and I remember designating this as urban low intensity. And so, one initial reaction could be, well, that's what the comp plan adopted, and that's what we should stick with. And I don't necessarily agree with that. What I wanted to do when these properties came through is have a dialogue about what the development was to see if that made sense for the property. And I think as we move through this, Forever Green Road is an arterial road, and it makes sense for that frontage if it makes sense to be urban high intensity. Alexander Way will come down eventually and connect to Forever Green Road. So now you have the intersection of an arterial road and a collector street. And to me, those make sense to be higher intensity, higher densities that we've looked at. Certainly Jones Boulevard and Penn, I've kind of said those same things. So that makes sense a little bit. So let me get a little bit further into it. So you see on the left, the zoning map is ID. You have RM12 to the west. You have RD10 to the north. There's RS, I believe it's 4 to the south across the street. Future land use map is urban low intensity, as I mentioned, and to the east, it's the same. As you go along the east, there's some larger lot home sites along the frontage of Forever Green Road, and then you have Fox Valley across the street. I think what we talked about was a decrease in density as you move from the west to the east. You have the RM12 to the west. And so the overall acreage of the overall density of the residential portion of the development is less than 8 units to the acre. And so it meets the comp plan. But moving the higher density a little bit further to the west to be adjacent to the Forever Green Estates. And that made sense to me of doing maybe some apartments mixed in with townhomes, decreasing the density as you move west. And then actually, as you get to the eastern edge of the property, to actually do single family zoning. I do envision the property to the east there as being single family zoning. That's more compatible with those larger lot development to the east. Just didn't make sense to put RM8 along the entire property, and then because I think what would happen is the next property owner to the east would say, well, we want RM8 too. And you're already starting to see a lot of townhouses being built on that west end of town. So I think what we are aiming for is a mixture of housing types along that area. We did have a virtual good neighbor meeting on April 5th. I was actually surprised that we didn't have many people attend. So it was really, I think we just had a couple people that were just there gathering information. So it was really the property owner, representatives from McClure and staff just kind of talking about it a little bit. We do have one formal objection that's in the file, so that I do want to note that. I did speak with the property owner directly, I guess it would be to the southeast of the property on the north side of Forever Green Road. He had some general questions about it, so I incorporated that correspondence in the file. I didn't take that as a formal objection, just kind of a informational type thing as we saw these conversations about how the development would progress. A couple of considerations that I think were important when we're talking about how the development, how the subdivision would be laid out. Number one is the intersection of where Alexander Way would meet Forever Green Road. And you can see on the map on the top is I circled where we think generally that would be. Josiah has been really good at just kind of looking at spacing between we really want to limit the number of intersections that we have on that street and make sure there's adequate, safe spacing for it. And be able to facilitate additional development. That same property owner owns property on the south side of Forever Green Road. And I'll show you another map here in a second. But if you look on the right, it's not good up here, but there's a 40-foot wide platted street at the southeast. That doesn't make a lot of sense to us to put a street there, particularly because Covered Bridge Boulevard, I think it is, in Fox Valley is constructed there, and then you have an offset intersection that just doesn't make a lot of sense. There is some topography, as you can see the drainage way moving through there. That's not such a big issue, but so we see Alexander Way coming in Forever Green Estates and then making kind of an S curve and then coming down and connecting is generally speaking where you see that location there. The other thing that helped drive it is what Pat had just mentioned is, okay, if we do have a collector street through there, we do have planned 8-foot wide trail on the west side. We don't want to see houses and things on that frontage. So then that kind of drives, you can either have single family homes that have a bunch of side streets on there, or you can do other types of developments like townhomes and those types of things. So that's kind of where we ended up on. This map you could see is Coralville's West Land Use Area Plan. So this is area in Coralville south of Forever Green Estates. And so you can kind of see where I showed where the property is, and that white road would be a connection all the way down into Coralville, just down to the strip. And so this is, I mean, arguably going to be a pretty significant intersection, I think. And so it really lays out that when you look at all of these things, yeah, this does make sense to be a commercial location at the intersection. I see a situation where it's probably, and again, you really want to look at spacing when you do this, to be a signalized intersection at some point in time, which makes it a little bit more viable for commercial development as well. So those are the types of things we looked at kind of when talking about this development. And again, I think they were really willing to kind of look at moving some things around for the development, which I appreciated, kind of keeping that density a little bit further to the west and stepping it down to the east, which I think makes sense from an overall development too. And I think if I go back to, it's hard to see up here, but Ruth Avenue in Forever Green Estates terminates into the property. We see that continuing through and connecting to the east to facilitate kind of the continuation of the street pattern. And so Hodge owns the development to the east. So you're starting to see this area kind of fill in, which is kind of neat and pretty interesting. Like I said, this has been one of the more interesting ones and fun to look at because it's just really starting to set up the stage for the development of that overall area. I mentioned the letter of objection in the file. And let's see. We did have two findings. And again, there's two requests here. One is to amend the future land use map from urban low intensity to urban high intensity on that 7.65 acres. So we do think there's consistency with comp plan policies for that. And we also think the rezoning achieves consistency with approval standards. And then we recommend that you accept those two listed findings and forward your request to the City Council with recommendation for approval for the comp plan amendment as well as the rezoning. Thank you. It was a long-winded one. Sorry.
Thank you.
Well, Ryan.
And do we have any applicant comments or presentation? Please come to the podium and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Bryce Ocken. I'm with McClure Engineering. I do not have a formal presentation, but I'd just like to thank Josiah and Ryan for their help through this process.
Thank you. Any public comments? If not, we'll go to the commissioners. Questions, feedback?
I did have a question as I was looking at the high intensity section at the bottom with the commercial. What you said about the collector as it meets an arterial makes perfect sense to me. But when I look at the eastern part of that, as you abut towards that very large lot coming off the north side of Forever Green, and of course, neighborhood where I live, which these are larger lots. How do we step down the commercial towards the east side? What are you guys envisioning over there, just for kind of compatibility with the neighboring properties there?
So you do have that right of way, which buffers you 40 feet, I believe you said, right, Russ? But those sites, from the developer's perspective, are just going to be green space. They're not looking at building those out at that time, so they don't have any plans at this time for those properties. They would be under the buffer standards between a residential and a commercial. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, we'll have the code requires a minimum of 10 feet. I know that area. Let me see if I have a better picture. You can see the drainage way that comes through. It takes the drainage from the Forever Green Estates subdivision, and then it moves through the development. So they'll have to have a pond over in that location, and then it outfalls to the east in that location. I don't know if they'll be able to accommodate or if they'll need some drainage, but the area that it kind of pushes to the east. But from a minimum standpoint, you have at least a 10-foot buffer, vegetative buffer, landscape buffer in the code for commercial adjacent to residential. If you've been through there, I'm sure you have, Jason. You've got that area that's a 40-foot wide. There's some pretty good trees on that right now, and we'll have to go through a formal process. Again, I don't envision that area being a right of way, so formal process would be to vacate that as a right of way and then convey it to the property owner to the east, I assume. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. That would have to be a formal process. We'll have to get into it and look at the development review at that time. I probably would envision the more intense commercial uses if they are being at that intersection and then stepping down to whatever it is to that east. We do allow multifamily and those things now in commercial zoning. So.
I'm glad you mentioned the stormwater piece because they're not planning on developing any stormwater management for those sites before they're built out. So naturally that building pad flows to it'd be the northeast. So naturally they're most likely when those sites are built out, they're going to look at putting stormwater in that area. So.
With that commercial, what's the possibility? What is the plan for? Is it direct? Would it be direct connection to Forever Green, or would it require a frontage road? Or
no, we're going to limit it to be the one entrance, so at Alexander Way, and so they'll have to do kind of like it'd be kind of like how Hayes is over at Brandon's development, where you get the one connection, and then you'll have to do either a private road along the back. So yeah, we're really looking to limit people's direct access to Forever Green Road.
Good.
That's what we've been talking about this
to
whole
keep
time.
it arterial.
Yep.
So there's a couple right of ways on those single lot homes that just will not get used then.
Yeah, there's the one here,
Right, and then the
there's
one that's farther
further to the east. Yeah, we've talked about that one too, and Josiah and I've kind of looked at how this over. We're not sure that the other one to the east makes a lot of sense either.
Yeah. So just have Jones Boulevard and Alexander be the intersections there, and not having another sort of intersection.
The challenge becomes making sure the fire prevention has. You can't develop so many lots. You have to have. As soon as you get 30 or above, you have to have multiple accesses in to the development, and I presume that's why they platted these, is thinking of having But
Unless you want sprinklers.
unless you want sprinklers, right? No one
Can you
does.
sprinkle them?
So yeah, we've looked at another one, and the other one has a drainage feature as well. It just right now, and it just seems like we put these driveways in for the for Keystone too. Now you start to have this offset situation, and so
Yeah.
it doesn't make a whole ton of sense right now. But we're
Yeah,
still
yeah.
looking
You look at that road and you're like, could have been thought maybe just slightly differently with how some of those connections were. Okay. Hindsight.
Why plan when you can react?
There you go. Just we love reacting, right? Yes.
No, this is cool. I mean, I think about Alexander Way. We've been you can see it in the photo next to Fox Valley. There's a natural area that goes into Coralville. Bruce, the property owner, Bruce Colony's been pretty open to be developing this in a manner that benefits North Liberty and Coralville. And so we've kind of had some conceptual talks with Coralville about making this kind of a park space and a natural trail that goes down into Coralville would be pretty cool.
That'd be on the west side of the classification center then? Yeah,
So-
it's that far west, isn't
So
it?
if you go down south of Forever Green Road, it goes behind actually Fox Valley. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
So like I said, this is kind of exciting, kind of be some cool things here.
And I would assume that if Alexander Way gets connected to Jones Boulevard in that location, that however that southern property in Coralville is developed would also then connect at that same intersection and they
Yeah.
wouldn't offset it. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's our preference, the way we've been looking at that. And again, we think with all the development in the west side plan that's proposed, you're going to have a lot of traffic coming north and south. It just, that's one option. You could do an offset. We think it makes a heck of a lot more sense to just do it, that they line up. And then, like I said, probably going to be a signalized intersection at some point in time.
not a roundabout. I love roundabouts.
I think in our,
Roundabouts are fantastic. And there's,
yeah,
the
it could
person
be.
that designs them does a really good job.
Make them look really nice.
People are
You know-
trained now too. I mean, we've
Love
got
'em.
enough
I
experience.
love
that-
them.
Yeah.
Big Ben, Parliament.
Yeah.
And the one
Why
thing, the one thing we have been talking about too is, we have the trail on the south side. There's 10-foot sections, university constructed there. So we're filling in those gaps. Jones now we have signalized, Kansas will have, but we need areas to get people across the street, safe areas to cross that street. And so roundabout is safe. We feel comfortable about that, signalized another way. So, but it could be. We make them look nice.
They look fantastic. They move traffic wonderfully.
Yeah.
So, but I will say, I know they're safe. Technically, they are safe for pedestrians, but
Yep.
you still have that slight hesitance, right? It's not as smooth for pedestrians.
Yep.
To cross them when you have people that just are now used to the roundabouts and
It's a learning
use the
curve.
curbs.
A learning curve.
Yeah, or
Pardon the
something.
pun, right?
But I do feel that having commercial along that along Forever Green makes sense to me. So yeah, I think that's, and then I think stepping up with I think it looks good.
Appreciate that.
Other questions? Thank you. If we have nothing else, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move that the planning commission accept the two listed findings and forward the future land use map amendment and zoning map amendment to the city council with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Patty? And may I have a roll call vote, please?
Baffy,
Aye.
Heisler,
Aye.
Stabler,
Aye.
Ahern,
Aye.
Aye.
Item number 7, approval of the previous minutes. There are no corrections. Can I have a motion
I'll move to approve the previous minutes.
and a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Old and new business. What do we got?
Well, it's with a heavy heart that that I will mention. We've had Pat has mentioned that he will not be reapplying. So I was combing through old planning meetings, which I do daily, and I think I got back to like 2016. Does that sound about right?
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So-
I think it's 8 years.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right.
I think it's 8 years.
So,
You're still just a little town.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, but
eight
it was
years
bigger,
is a-
bigger than when I first moved here.
yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
In 1999. There wasn't even a stoplight.
Yeah.
And softball was the biggest thing out here, huh?
So certainly I appreciate, Pat, everything you brought to the table. I appreciate this process. You guys are a check on me, to make sure I'm not going too rogue out there. You bring up things that I'm not thinking about, so I appreciate it. And I know it's a fun position. With Grant, I always talk that you're always the first person to know what's going on,
Yeah.
in here.
That's
They,
great.
they're probably come and ask you.
Don't
so.
you want to keep that?
Yeah, if it wasn't for some work and family obligations that I just feel prevent me from participating as much as I would like to participate, I would have definitely put in an application to extend. I just feel that this is an important role, and you should be available to attend as many of these meetings as possible. So.
Well, he's
So I'll
got to
just-
say all that, but the rest of us have always appreciated you having here too. So thank you for everything.
So, but yeah, I should have absolutely no problem filling these roles. It's wonderful to see the city continue to develop, and I look forward to watching more. And maybe sometime in the future, if things settle down for me, I can try to sneak my name back on that application. So,
Show up at our new digs.
yeah, that's
Next
right.
meetings over in the new place.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to follow that. So I don't really have anything beyond that. But again, thank you so much, Pat. We really appreciate your service.
Do we need to talk about the meeting timing officially, or is that an unofficial thing we can talk
I'll
about?
send you. I sent Josie an email. Our city council is in June going to be moving their meetings to 6 p.m. I'll send out an email to you guys if you could. We'll just take a poll to see if you guys could make that work. If you're interested in that, I'd come at 6 or 6:30. It doesn't matter to me. But if you want to, it's out there. So I'll send people an email and
Great.
they could vote, and then we'll.
Like you said, starting next month is at the new place. What's the agenda look like for next month?
We do have the preliminary plat for that development that we just talked about. So again, we've been kind of going back and forth with some of the street layouts and things. Sewering it is a little bit more of a challenge. Again, it's not flowing to the new pump station. It's supposed to go down to the Fox Valley. So we've been working through that. You will see the community pantry at the old Penway. They're the old ball fields. We've been working with them.
Nice.
They're going to be going at 350 West Penn. So they did close on that property. So that's super exciting for them. We think it's a great fit for that property.
Yeah.
Again, another one of these challenges, we look at things like, we got the trail that kind of dead ends there.
Right.
And the one at Dubuque and Stewart's kind of funky. So we've been just talking today about, is there a safer way to get people across the street? So tunnels. Yeah, I love tunnels. But again, they've just been really solid to work with. I mean, they gave us, got out in front of it, gave us a concept. We gave them some initial feedback. So as we
Well,
move.
what a great location across.
The
I've had,
community center.
I've had some, the
Range
Mecca Farm
on.
is one where you just get questions like, we want to put mini warehouse buildings there. And it's just like, no. And then this one was like, oh yeah, this
One more community resource in that little corridor there.
it made total sense. So we're excited.
That's fantastic. Okay, I will not be here next month, but other than that, officially, thank you for your service. And if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion for adjourning the meeting.
I motion to adjourn.
A second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.